Hello, welcome everyone to my teaching learning session of BA courses of psychology with English. I'll be taking and continuing with the introduction of social psychology, unit 5. We continue with attitude and behavior to understand is attitude always leading to behavior, and we in the last class understood that there are some circumstances that could allow attitude to lead to behavior. So that means not every attitude, not every aspect of your attitude will lead to behavior. That suggests us that at times there could be a possibility that we have a negative attitude towards somebody, but our behaviors are not that similar. So that makes us understand not every attitude leads to behavior, but there are some major points which will make us understand that there are some attitudes that can and some attitudes that cannot. Coming back to three major concepts of applied social psychology that we will talk about, which is SINGH application. Why did I say applied social psychology? Because this is something that you can all see in society. So speaking of stereotypes mean assuming and an assumption that a group of people who share common characteristics about certain attribute has been made by anybody. In other words, we can assume that this could be a reason because of their identity, their behaviors, the way they portray themselves in society. So some stereotypes are mostly they're negatively impacting us. They have both the two. Stereotypes can be both positive, stereotypes can be both negative. So having both negative and positive, they are usually impacting us negatively. They are overly simplistic. Why they are overly simplistic? Because we do not have a logic behind it. We do not know the reason why we have heard a concept or why we have heard a statement regarding a certain group sharing an attribute, which is like a certain group having a common attribute that we assume them all to have. So probably one group of that person is probably miser and does not believe in sharing their information or contacts. We assume that this is something which is common in that entire group. So this is going to negatively impact them because we might not go to interact with such people. Second, they are overly simplistic. We just assumed that one individual has it, so the entire group will have it. So that is overly simplistic. It is dangerous. Why it is dangerous? We are controlling ourselves in communicating with these people. We are controlling for not forming bonds, not taking the information required, and again an assumption which is negatively impacting to their image, which is that certain group. And last, it's unfair. The reason stereotypes mostly stands to be unfair is that we do not have a logic to reason it out that why are we saying that this particular attribute is a part of the entire group. So that's why they're unfair. We unfairly justify everyone in the group to have a common attribute, which we might have not seen before, which we might have not seen with our own experiences with these people, but we've assumed because one individual in the entire group has it, and we assume every individual will have it. That's called stereotypes. Stereotypes can make us discriminate people also, which we come down further. Now, after stereotype, we come to something which is prejudice. Prejudice are more stronger. They are because they are belief system, so they are stronger than stereotypes. Stereotypes are merely assumptions. So when I say they are merely assumptions, we have just collection of ideas regarding a certain group that we assume that an entire group will be sharing. Prejudice, on the other hand, is a belief. Belief comes with a lot of thinking, with a lot of feeling, and a lot of ideas that you hold about somebody in a group or probably an entire group. So it's not based on personal experiences, rather than it's based on prejudgment. This prejudgment is not logical, but it does involve you thinking about it before. So you might be thinking about that, that idea about a group that you're holding. Let's take the same example when we take that the group is miser and this group is not really willing to share their own contacts and their own information with other people. We assume and we think about it. So we might, the prejudgments that we end up making would be originating for something that we see outside them. So we see them not communicating. We see this group not communicating with other people. We see this group not sharing not only contacts but other things with other people. So that strengthens our thought. This prejudgment that we see outside us and outside our own personal experience, we assume and take them as prejudice. Prejudices ideally are negative in nature. They are not like stereotype that they can be both positive and negative. They are mostly negative in nature. And why prejudice is based in belief outside of experiences. experience can lead a person to feel that their prejudice is confirmed and justified. So, the fact that they, as I said, it was away and outside your experience, and one experience is done, and you share that, okay, I had this prejudice that these people are miser, these people do not share contact, and you just have a very small experience which is very close to justifying that they're miser, that will solidify that prejudice of yours. So that prejudice be negative or anything. This is also called as confirmation bias, because as soon as your personal experiences justify as a prejudice, it's called a confirmation bias. That will obviously change the way you think about these people, the way you act with these people, which is behave. So let's understand attitude on the other end. When we start with stereotype, is something which leads to prejudice. Prejudice is the thinking component that you have, because the thinking, reasoning, assumption, judgment happens in prejudice. Also, while prejudice often usually originates outside experiences, at times, prejudice also tends to be intuitive. So, instinctive. So, instinctive as something that comes out of your gut, and you feel, okay, I do not wish to be talking to these group of individuals. They do not favor me, and they might not even favor me later. So, this instinctive feeling can also lead to form of prejudice, which you might think about it later, which might not be a part of your personal experiences. So, one origin of your prejudice could be just being instinctive, it just happens to you. As well as stereotypes can also lead to it, which is obviously fair. When you've been having a certain assumption about a group of people, that can lead to prejudices, which can be negative, which could solidify your belief system, which is belief is prejudice, which is your thinking, reasoning, your judgment, your value making about that group can solidify, and further can lead to discrimination. Discrimination often stems from something which is taught and learned. So, prejudice, usually when practiced more often, is taught and learned to us. And prejudice is a cognitive component, which is the thinking component. Discrimination is the behavioral component. So, when we say behavioral component, so that suggests us it to be as discrimination. So let's just go through it with the help of the picture that you see on your, on your left. Stereotype is the cognitive component, which is if you think. Prejudice carries both cognitive and affective components. So you feel, you think here, and you pre-assume. So see, it's a bigger component of stereotype. That's the reason in stereotype you only categorize people, but in prejudice you feel like they're doing like this. You rather than just assumptions, there are feelings, there are logic, there are a lot of collection of ideas emphasizing on that prejudice. And once that prejudice further solidifies, and you see that happening outside, not outside, but also within your experiences, it could lead to the way you act, which leads down to discrimination. And that's how, communal rights in our country, that's how communal discrimination in our country takes place. Because we learn about other communities by people, which is an assumption, which is a stereotype. It's a label that people have given to another group. Once that label is thought and felt and probably assumed a little more, that converts into prejudice. And when this prejudice gets confirmed, you take it towards discrimination, which is acting towards that communal group. We could be discriminating, we could be harsh, we probably could be withdrawing from that group, which is the entire triad of stereotype, prejudice, and discrimination coming into play in our society. Now, further to this, let's move to a new topic. When we know that prejudices are usually coming from the feeling, coming from the belief of thinking, reasoning, problem solving, what are the sources? How are we learning it? So prejudices are often negative. As I said, stereotypes has a two-tone. So stereotype has two sides of a coin, which is it could be positive also, and it could be negative also. But prejudices are usually negative in its tone. You will always find it towards the negative side, and an attitude towards a member which is preconceived as negative. Now, we all know that it can have a very strong influence on the way you act, you behave with people, and interact with people. Particularly people who are, completely different in some regard in your unconscious level or your subconscious level. Subconscious level is something that you've heard about them, something that you know about them, people telling you about them. So knowing of that, let's understand what could be the ways that we have been learning prejudice. We have said it could be taught and learned. Discrimination can be taught and learned. So can be prejudice, because it's the belief. Belief is thinking, feeling, thoughts. So it can be first be, we all know that in our society, prejudices are based on variety of things. It's based on gender, it's based on sex, it's based on culture, religion. It is even based on literacy at times. That's how, we are having A class group of education, a B class group of education, and occupation too in our society. Speaking to and coming back to the sources, what is causing or probably what is making us learn prejudices? The first point is threat to self-esteem. Tajfel and Turner stated in 1986 that people tend to evaluate their own group as far more positive than the others, which is correct. There are possibilities that we, when are assuming about our own groups, we are more positive in comparison to other people. So we think that our group is better. We think that our group is more, more capable. We feel that our group has more, more attributes of success in them in comparison to the others. So this is what Ashwell and Turner stated in 1986. When people perceive a threat to their group, when they perceive that a threat is coming to their group, they want to save their group, and what do? They counter attack the other person. How do we counter attack the other person? We tend to negate them from the other person. That means we perceive ourselves as positive, and what do we do to the others? We put down their self-esteem to control, to take care of our self-esteem, to take care of our image in the society. We put them down. So how do we do that? We negatively impact. We make sure that our self-esteem is not negatively impacted. We do that by strengthening our self-esteem and putting them down. So this is the most simplest source of learning prejudice. We learn it because we want to save ourselves. We want to save our group. We want to save our community. And what do we do for that? We put down the others, thinking that that other group is, the out group and in group thing. That outer group is a threat to our self-esteem and our image. So that is the first way that we end up learning. It's one of the most simplest way that everyone learns prejudice. To save yourself, we put something to the others. We just put a wrongdoing on others. This is one of the most easiest and one of the biggest and common source of prejudice around in our society and community. Then coming to prejudgments. In one of the classical experiments that we had, which was talking about prejudgment, participants were asked to judge the height of people shown in a photograph, and they were told that for every woman of a particular height, there was a man of the same height. So we show you a picture, like a photograph. It has multiple women in that pictures, and we tell them that with these particular women and their heights, we do have, like, if one woman over there is 5'3", so we have a particular man who's 5'3". If he is 5'4", we have a man who's 5'4". If there's 5'5", we have a man 5'5". So for every particular woman of a particular height, there's a man of the same height. So therefore, they will not rely on the person's sexes to determine the height, despite being, they know that, okay, if a man is of this height, a woman is also of this height. So despite being offering $50 of cash prize, whoever made the most accurate judgments, participants consistently rated men as few inches taller than women. So despite they were getting $50 for telling the fact that the women is 5'3", so the man has to be 5'3" too. If the photograph has women 5'4", the second woman 5'4", the man would be 5'4". Despite of that, despite of getting a $50, they did not rate males to be of that height. They usually rated males to be taller. So this is what a prejudgment, that men are usually taller in our society than women, and they have a height which is high. That's why average male height is 5'7", and a women average height is 5'3", 5'5". Because we assumed, we have already got through statistics, that males average height is higher than women. So here also, despite they were told that you will get a $50, you have to tell that if the woman is 5'3", the male can also be 5'3". They still did not. They actually made a presumption, which is a prejudgment, that these men would be taller in height in comparison to the women that they were seeing. Because their prejudgment, men were stated as taller, the participants were unable to dismiss their categorical belief, the belief that are based on individuals' gender category. We did not dismiss that. So that is happening because of prejudgment. We already have a prejudgment that obviously males tend to be taller. Similarly, prejudgment that women tends to gain more fluctuation on weights because of their body type. That's also a prejudgment to people. We never know, women today are more fitter in the generation that we have today. So prejudgments also become one of the huge source of prejudice. Again, it's very simplistic. Yes, it is dangerous because assuming something which is not proved does not have a logic behind it, right? and also has a negative intonation. Why it has a negative intonation? Because it does not stand to reason out the main thing. It is not reasoning logically the statement and attribute that you've been quoting. So this is the second source, which was prejudgment. Let's move further to another source which states that competition for resources. There was a theory called realistic conflict theory that stated that whenever two or more groups that are seeking the same limited resources, there will be conflicts, which is very true. Let's take an example. There's a glass of water. There are five children coming from it. I'm sure for that one glass of water, after the play activity, there's going to be a huge fight. Why? Because there are five children and you have one glass of water. We will fight for that resource, which is water. So the realistic conflict theory actually stated the right thing. When there are two or more groups seeking limited resources, there will be bound to have conflicts. There will be conflicts, sorry. Realistic conflict theory also claims that prejudice and discrimination occur as a result of real competition between groups for resources. So the resources can be anything. It could be monetary, it could be material monetary, it could be social, it could be physical also, that both group desire. So we should have groups that both desire to have that resource. For example, if your group one does not require a social resource and your group two requires a social resource, there's not going to be a conflict. So we need to have a resource which is required for both of them, and there's a conflict behind it. So this finishes with the conflict theory that states us that groups usually have any sort of prejudice and discrimination because they are fighting for resources. And that's the reason we come down to the first one. What do? To safeguard our self-esteem, we probably belittle the other person, label them with some sort of stereotypical idea that could lead to prejudice which are negative in nature. Then also psychology Jordan Allport believed that to make sense of the world around us, it is important to sort the mental categories, which is very true. Before that you're going to an event, you want to categorize what will I do in that event. So what are you doing? You are trying to make more sense out of your mind. So the human mind must think with the aid of categories, which is we need to have some aid that will help us to categorize groups, categorize people, categorize situation around us. So the human mind must think with the aid of these categories, and Allport actually explained this concept in his book called Nature of Prejudice. Once formed, categories are the basis of normal prejudgments, which is true. We cannot possibly, avoid these processes. So orderly living depends upon it. Being able to quickly categorize information allows us to interact quickly. They also allows us the fact. Let's take an example. You need to go to a party, and the party has a theme. The theme is the category. The theme is allowing you to make sure that you know it already, that how people are going to be grouped and dressed up. So this is a stereotypical attitude, which is a pre-assumptions, which we already have in our mind. So these categories are really important because they help us interact quickly. They help us interact well. They help us, avoid mistakes, which is when you know the condition of this is going to be this, you make sure that you will wear this. You will make sure you go according to theme. Minimize any kind of mistakes that you can end up making. For example, we tend to minimize the differences amongst group within a certain group and exaggerate the differences between a group. This is called social categorization, which is very true. So the fact that we want to feel within a group, we tend to feel similar to that group, and you want to feel dissimilar from the other group, so you exaggerate their differences to socially categorize yourself different from the other. This happens with teenagers also. When they enter to a popular group, they try and tell the popular group that this is how it's similar to you, and this is how our group is so different from the other, which could be a second in line, a third in line in terms of grouping. So what are we doing? We are socially categorizing ourselves and exaggerating the difference to highlight our similarities. So this is important, at times, just for interacting well, knowing well, avoiding mistakes, we do social categorization, which is another way of prejudices, a source of prejudices, which just simply happens to us. Now let's move to discrimination. Let's come to the behavioral part of our attitude. Our attitude begins with stereotypes, which is just thinking. Then we come to prejudices, which is thinking, feeling, both cognition and feeling happening together. And last is when this cognition and feeling gets very strong, it will be observed in your behavior, which looks like discrimination. Discrimination is obviously a very differential treatment of individuals belonging to a particular social group, community, or religion. So this is a differential, treatment to people, which could be based on gender, sexes, community, religion, and social categories. Also, the categories that we just spoke about. So it generally is an overt behavioral expression. What is overt? Overt is something which can be seen. So we have two kinds of behaviors, overt and covert. Overt are behaviors that are seen, covert are behaviors are not seen. So behavior is something which is observable, so it's a covert behavioral expression of prejudices. So it is coming as a source. So where is it coming from? You have a stereotype, it may and may not lead to prejudice. But if you have a prejudice, there are high chances that it will come down to discrimination. Discrimination of any kind, it could be a lighter discrimination, it could be usual discrimination. So there are some disguised forms of discrimination that you will see around yourself, which is reluctance to help. This is like the first way that we start discriminating people, that differential attitude starts coming into us, which is reluctance to help people. This is like the most subtle way of discrimination, like something which is not even detectable. You don't even say it, people don't even say it as discrimination, where the members of prejudice group are unwillingly helping the group, target groups in any ways to improve their status in the society. So I would not like to say this, but a lot of celebrity donate, which is this. They donate just to make sure that their self-esteem is empowered. Empowered as in they empowering others to power their self-esteem. So they tend to help the targeted group in order to improve their status in the society. So this is like a reluctance to help. They have to do it. They have the money. They have to do it. Why? Because that will fruitfully support their image, support their status. There are so many celebrities out of defense who are reluctant to help, but they end up helping. They help. That is not a part of their personality, but they have to do it. Why? Because of the fact that that will improve their image, that will improve their status in society. Next is tokenism. When we speak about tokenism, it's a kind of discriminatory behavior where target group is provided with very insignificant and unimportant help from the prejudiced group. So that means you're helping, but the help is of no need. But on the picture, on the floor, let's take an example. You give something to somebody, the giving will always be considered as giving, no matter it's helpful or not helpful to people who are watching from far away. So the fact that we are, talking about helping other people, but it is insignificant. It is not something which is required by the prejudice group. By the target group. The prejudice group is doing. Why? Because they want to do it. They want to highlight themselves again. But this tokenism is only to support yourself, and this might not be very helpful to the target group because the help that you're providing is really, really not worthy of it. Then we come to reverse discrimination. This is a little extreme in comparison to reluctance to help and tokenism because they both talk about supporting and helping, irrespective how important it is. So it is an extreme form where the target group is helped to even, their help just to extreme content. Like you go out of your way to help them, but this looks very positive. But in the later time, it is going to backfire to the target group. So you give something to the target group that could probably lead to a disease, probably lead to difficulties in the society, which will require the target group to take support or probably give away something. So this is like a reverse discrimination, an extreme form of discrimination that we have. So these are some small disguised form of discrimination that we see around ourselves, and which is reluctance to help, tokenism, and reverse discrimination. So we understood discrimination is a behavioral form of prejudice. It's a differential treatment that we give to individual based on community, gender, caste, group, sexes, education, literacy, etc. Let's move ahead. Let's see some simple causes of discrimination. What is causes? The picture that you see. At times, the causes of discrimination could be dissimilarity in social distance. One of the first is that we end up perceiving so much about people. We make so many prejudgments, culturally based, that we are so distinct to communicate that those differences just keep growing, and that leads to social distance and further discrimination. I've seen there are a lot of people that talk about community-based discrimination because those communities are completely inaccessible. You don't communicate to them. You don't have any social contact. So not having a social contact, then that distance exaggerates the discrimination that we are talking about. So it results in more differential treatment differential treatment for individuals. The next is economic competition, which is very true. When one group is having economic benefits and enjoys everything, the other one loses out. So that's one of the most simplest way of discriminating people, which is economic benefits, old growth logging, jobs versus environment, etc. Then there is scapegoating, blaming an innocent person for one's own problem. So this is like when the in-group starts blaming the out-group, that this group is responsible for letting the community down. We are more stronger, we are more participative, we are the face value of our group, but this out-group is not doing it. So what do? Blame game. We put it on them. So it's called scapegoating, which is escaping by putting the blame on somebody else. That also leads to a lot of prejudices, which is obviously Jewish people during Nazis in Germany. Then conformity to social norm. This is also, a tendency where you completely don't think at all. You are not thinking at all. You just end up assuming because you're a part of the group. So the group tells you that these other groups are mean. The other groups are not helping. The other groups are not worthy of attention. You start believing them because you're a part of that cultural group. You need to follow the norms. Norms are the unstated, unstructured rules that just happens to us. So that is conformity to social norms. Then we have media stereotypes. Media stereotype is images, words, ideas which are projected onto certain groups in a very overgeneralized way, which is very true. Availability of so much of social media news, the way they make us think about a particular group, exaggerate about it in different forms, actually makes us form a prejudice, which will further help us form a discrimination amongst people. So these are simple 4 ways that could be some, according to social psychology, some ways that discrimination is being caused. One is the social distance and dissimilarity between groups. Economic competition is very, very, it's an inevitable thing. It's continuously being seen in our society. Scapegoating comes from very small groups to the higher groups. Conformity to social norms, such a natural activity. We have to conform to that unthinking tendency when we are part of the social group. So if you're a part of a popular group and your popular group of friends tells you that this second group is not worthy, it's not according to our status and standards, you will start belittling them and see them as very shallow. Why? Because it's an unthinking tendency. You don't have to think anything. This pre-assumption has been given by the norms of your groups. The last is media stereotype. The way media overgeneralizes some concepts, overgeneralizes some attributes of the groups, makes us assume it like that and further discriminate. So now let's understand how we can reduce all of it. How can we reduce stereotype in our society, prejudice in our society, and discrimination? I'll tell you some simple ways first to do it is, education and awareness is the key to open the doors. I feel just to open someone's eyes to the right path, the first thing is giving awareness about that structure that you're discriminating on or the concept. So if it's a communal region, if it's a community, if it's a social group, if it's according to economic ability, disability, you need to first have the awareness regarding the same and education, which education could be in the form of wisdom, could be in the form of knowledge also. So let's move on to the ways to reduce stereotype, prejudices, and discrimination that we have. So social learning approach suggests us that this teaches the social learning. This teaches that stereotype, prejudices, and further discrimination are usually learned. We are actually learning it from society, isn't it? We are observing behaviors of our parents, of our authority figures, and once you observe them and see that they're actually doing well in society, you tend to adapt it and put it in your own behaviors. Social learning. Social learning can be of stereotypes, it could be of prejudice, it could also be of discrimination. That's how our little children learn to discriminate, a certain group on that basis. So that is something which is social learning approach, telling us that we need to reduce it by giving us better learning. Make sure that your authority figures, make sure your parents do not do anything which will create a prejudice against a gender, community, race, sex, anything. So the more the child sees an adaptable, healthy behavior, thinking, he or she would obviously disregard stereotypes like that. The next is training to discourage prejudices or learning. So this is something we make sure that you do not learn stereotypes. We negate you to learn stereotypes. Biased persons should be alerted that their prejudice is because they're promoting their own views in the children. So what do we need to do? We need to make sure that the parenting is evolving with the passing time in such a way that no notions, no negative attributes of other groups should be given to children. So this is simply training children to discard stereotypes, discard forming an assumption on a certain group, discard having a negative belief system about a certain group. So this is simply training your children. The next is teaching tolerance. This is an attribute. This is not, I feel, a way of reducing. This is something that we can give as an attribute also to our children, like uh, telling them to tolerate the differences, telling to appreciate and embrace differences between two community, two economically different classes. This will reduce the generation of prejudices. So, say prejudice is a harm to both parties. The one who's the target, obviously a higher in tone, and the one who's prejudiced group. Why? You are building so much of negative and discouraging attitude towards somebody. This is holding on so much negativity and making someone else a victim, or probably making yourself a victim by holding a prejudice. So prejudices generate the person worry, hatred, anger, a lot of negative behaviors, reduced enjoyment. So we need to control this by embracing all the differences that we have, gain better knowledge about it, which is would be tolerating the prejudices or stereotypes that we have. Now, we have furthermore ways which can actually reduce the prejudice also and the discrimination amongst people, which is increased intergroup contact. So when we speak about increased intergroup contact, it is not intra, it's inter. So let's take one example from the past. When we were fighting for resources, water is a resource where people can die because of it. So this is an essential resource to us. So how could we take care of it? We can take care of it by increasing the contact, realizing how many difficulties are there in an outer group and how much difficulties are there in the inner group. So let's take an example that your inner group is relatively healthy, has little children in the group, like not little children, but an average young adult in the group, and they have the higher chances to tolerate their thirst and hunger. At the same time, the outgroup has more elderly individuals and little children. So this suggests us the intergroup contact will allow us to understand the similarities and differences amongst them, and they understand that we all have the basic need to food and water. So when we all have the basic need to food and water, we need to understand who needs it. This can happen by facilitating an intergroup contact and facilitating harmony against them, amongst them. So what will happen when these groups interact? The labels go down because the thinking has got those labels. I don't say that the prejudice just gets shut down, but the feeling towards them of hatred reduces. Once that reduces, this contact hypothesis support us in delivering less stereotypical attitude, less discrimination would be there. It will allow us to work together in harmony. So this is increasing the intergroup contact so that the knowledge similarities increases, differences are facilitated, the harmony created in the group will allow us to function at the same level, which will further not discriminate them from us. So this is a contact hypothesis that we talk about. Then we move to something which is the social influence that we have. Social influence is a very important part of reducing prejudice in our society also. This strengthens when the behaviors are consistent with stereotype and prejudices are endorsed by the popular group. So, simple way. If a target group has something which you feel is negative, but the popular group comes into play, the one which is very known, something which is very cherished and probably cherished is something which is very respected in the society, that popular group embraces or addresses the difficulty or the stereotype or prejudice that you formed about the target group. So once it is embraced, accepted by a popular group, what will happen? That social influence will may help us think about a stereotype and change it. We might think that this is something which we need to rethink because there's a popular group which is been talking about it. The popular group suggests that they have more knowledge, they are more, they're more acceptable to society. They themselves are not discriminating people. So why are we doing it? So acceptance and embracement from a popular group might give us a higher influence. We all know we get influenced really early when it comes to a social platform through media, through popular people, through celebrities. And if they endorse something, we tend to reduce the stereotype and prejudice against a particular community, race, sex, gender, etc. So this is another way that can support us. Then let's have some more, understanding with the picture that I have, which is prejudice and discrimination. Greater interaction and education not necessarily reduce the level of prejudices in our society. So there are possibility that the too much of interaction might not also support its appropriate level of education and knowledge might do. We should also be using some learning, cooperative learning techniques, which is a classroom setting has demonstrated an effective means of promoting intergroup understanding and self-esteem. So, which is like I'm showing you the PowerPoint presentation along with my learning, we can do it with the target and the prejudice group sitting together, watching a PPT like a complete classroom program sort of a thing, and telling them, talking about the differences, talking about the policy between the two groups, talking about how it is impacting the two group and which group has the most out of the two. This can initiate cooperation, initiate understanding, and actual knowledge about one another and increase the self-esteem and self-image of one another. This finishes with few of the ways of reducing it. We have another way. The way we have social categorization in the last topic. What causes prejudices? Social categorization. When we categorize people according to Jordan Allport, there's another way of reducing it, which is called recategorization. The fact that we redraw the boundaries between the us and them. Us is the in group, them is the out group. So you reduce those categorization and boundaries. The theory of recategorization suggests, or common in-group identity model suggests, which was given by Gartner and his colleagues in 1989 and then revised in 1993. It explains that a group or individuals in a group, which is the us. So let's take this is the in-group. The us feeling is always the in-group. Shifts boundary to view the other group. So we become more flexible. So let's take an example. An in-group was initially not talking to any of the out-groups, but now they're becoming more flexible. They feel we will talk about the out-groups when we want to gain knowledge about their community. But we are opening ways. Any kind of way opening and shifting boundaries can recategorize your us and them. For an example, there's an example, beautiful example given. There's a match between group A and B. A is the in-group and B is the out-group, which is in the community. If B loses the match, A goes to play with other community. Now A becomes an in-group and B, because for the B, and A is representing their community. Their common in-group identity model suggests that individuals belonging to different social groups come to view themselves as members of a single social identity. So their attitude towards each other becomes more positive. Individual groups from different areas are getting together for a shared goal. So let's take an example when A has a match with B and B is the in-group and the A wins the match. A is representing a community from, because A and B both are the same community. B is probably a group which is lower in strata. A is a group which is higher in strata. But we do pick up some people from the B group to include in A when we have to fight with other groups. So what are we doing? We are recategorizing our us and they, picking up people who are really deserving. So this attitude change of getting people together, for shared goals, for shared resources, for shared activities. This is a single social entity and identity that we form. So when we have that single social identity out of the two groups, what are we doing? We're reducing the boundaries. We are recategorizing everything. So when we are recategorizing everything, we are breaking down the social categories, which was the cause of source of prejudice that we had. So then the unfriendly attitude towards the B group will reduce. Why? Because you picked up people from there also to play. Okay, so that was one of the last ways to recategorization, which is, as suggested, one of the best way to reduce prejudices amongst groups. Having a friendly match amongst community, which can be taken ahead to other communities. So these things, that's why our countries have friendly matches to keep that factor alive, that they can interact, they can know each other's flaws and differences, and reduce the us and the they. They are the same thing. Like when we talk about cricket, they all are playing cricket. That's the common goal and motive. They all are earning as a livelihood. That's a common goal and motive. So all of this, actually, the recategorization helps us reduce prejudices amongst different groups very quickly. Now, finishing with what were stereotypes, discrimination, and prejudice, what causes it, and what leads to it, and how we can reduce this, finishes our unit 5. Let's move to another unit, which is a very beautiful unit that I feel everyone can see around themselves, which is called as the interpersonal attraction and pro-social behavior. We know about interpersonal interaction, how it is different from interpersonal attraction. Interpersonal interaction is talking to one and more individuals. That's an interpersonal interaction. Now, having a liking towards one another in that interaction is called interpersonal attraction. So, forming, maintaining intimate, long-term relationships with other people is a very crucial thing in our social life. So, interpersonal attraction plays a very important role in relationship formation, provided there's a liking between the two. The two groups, the two people. Usually, two people is the best way to explain interpersonal attraction. Now, there are some determinants of interpersonal attraction. What is causing it and what is leading to it get better or reduces? Some internal determinants, which is coming from within, are what? One is the need to affiliate. The reason that we want to be with somebody could be, many researchers say, the tendency to get affiliated is survival in nature. It's a neurological base. That means we are born with it. Getting associated to a social group, getting associated to a school, to a workplace, to an organization, this is all inbuilt in us. It's an innate need. So the need to affiliate with others is the main concern of human living. We all know when the humans got together, when Homo sapiens as a mankind was evolving, as a species was evolving, grouping came into play. Grouping on the basis of affiliation was a part. We started liking one another because of getting associated to one another as groups. Because it's even very good, not only for your liking, perception, but psychological well-being. Thinking well about yourself, thinking well about your image, about yourself, this concept, your self-esteem. So this is an evolutionary, as I said, an advantage. Since interaction and cooperation with others help us leading a better, secure, and steady life, this is an innate factor. So the quantity of interpersonal relationship among human beings are innately present, as I mentioned it earlier. We are all born with this, sense of affiliating with any group, any people. That's why, orphans also wants a foster house, also needs an adopted house, because that's innate need to have a family, to have a group that could be called their own. Then another way is situational influences on affiliation, the need to affiliate. So how does situation, forces or leads to interpersonal attraction? For example, friendliness, cheerful behavior is found to increase, the results during the natural disaster. It is stated under, under natural disaster, natural calamities that happen, people tend to become more humble to one another, more friendly, more communicative, more cheerful to bond with one another. This was proved by Singer and this was proved by Scatter in 1959. He revealed that people facing similar problems tend to interact more in comparison to people with difficulties. Isn't that true? We end up finding partners with likes of cherishing the bond. Probably when people like to travel, like to go out together, probably have the similar kinds of problems, the similar kinds of defeats that we have, the similar kind of pitfalls that they have, and the similar kind of knowledge, they tend to bond together better. So similar problems get them interacting together, and people tend to, affiliate with one another because of those situational attributes. One possible reason for affiliation with such similarity is that people during such times seek social comparison also. Such comparison could lead to cognitive clarity and emotional clarity, which is while we're interacting with people, we get to know and we start comparing. Okay, I like this person, I like this group. So this group is different from the other group, leading to what? Social comparison. This social comparison is giving you what? What am I like? What's happening around me, the thinking clarity. This group is doing this and I am like this. And also an emotional clarity. What one feels. What do I really want to feel like? Do I want to be a part of this cheerful, nice, interactive, helpful group? I want to be a part of someone who is very centered towards their knowledge. They brag about their knowledge. They do not share it with others. So social comparison not only gives us an affiliation because of situation, but also cognitive clarity and emotional clarity for us. Now, there are other determinants also that we have. This is interpersonal interaction to be below it. We have role of affect in attraction, which is very, very important, I feel. Our emotions, positive evaluations of person leads to positive affect, while negative evaluation of a person leads to negative affect. So when you positively evaluate yourself, you feel really positive about yourself. If you negatively evaluate yourself, you feel quite negative about yourself. So we tend to like people who feel good about us, and we tend to withdraw, move away people who do not feel good about us. So people who blame you, who label you that you are only good for this, you're only good for that, that is something which is, making you give a negative evaluation of yourself. And who wants a negative evaluation about themselves? They want to move towards people who have a positive evaluation. So emotion, which is called affect, actually impacts attraction indirectly and at times directly also. This is known as the associated impact of affect on emotions. This happens when another person, we can give another example, the associated affect of emotion. This happens when another person is simply present at the same time that when a person's emotionally aroused state by something or someone, we evaluate that positive person's positivity when we are in a good mood and a person negatively when we are good mood, which is very true. How does your affect make changes about evaluation? When you're in a good mood, you tend to speak to everyone very nicely. You have a pleasant thought. You tend to be very moralistic, very philosophical about the world. Things happen like this. We need to change ourselves. We have to be more tolerant. But the days that you've had a negative thought, bad emotions, not feeling good, what happens actually? You tend to be in a bad mood. You negatively evaluate yourself and other people also. For example, of this phenomenon, there was an experiment which was done on pleasant versus unpleasant pictures. So the explanation was based on a classical conditioning. The relationship between the affect and attraction implied that, gave an implication for social influence. Attempts, the pictures and the unpleasant pictures told that once showing the pleasant pictures to people and then checking their state of mind, they found that people watching pleasant pictures were in a better state of mind rather than people watching negative pictures. Similarly, it goes to strategies. Why salesmen and salespeople are so welcoming, so productive. Some salespeople are very productive. You love going and interacting with them, and you like they will pick up the right thing for you. Why? Because they end up being so positive. Their affect, their emotions are so positive, and that's how there's a sense of attraction that develops for that particular area, person, or the seller, the salesperson. So this finishes the impact of affect in attraction. Let's move to some external determinants. So when we speak about external determinants, see, affect is inside, emotion is inside, situations, she makes changes inside. The innate need is again inside for attraction, which was affiliation. Now we come to something which is outside us. How those features which are present outside us lead us to get together, lead us to bond together. So let's come to the first one, which is called proximity. Proximity is closeness. So it's like literally closeness, physical closeness that we have. It is generally said that the close proximity fosters life, which is very true. In two people, let's take an example in your class. You accidentally sit next to somebody in your class for 2 to 3 days. You end up talking to them. You end up building a bond that fosters life. So because of the close proximity that you people share. Also, two people are likely to be acquainted if there is a physical proximity between them. Whether it, as I gave an example of the classroom, whether it is a classroom seats, hostel rooms, residential office desk, proximity of classes. Proximity is a very, very important, and one that fosters liking very quickly, attraction very quickly. Talking to somebody continuously fosters attraction. You keep, the reason why today in today's generation Z, we end up just talking to people online because that's fostering attraction. The proximity is not physical, but the attraction is getting you closer in terms of sharing everything about yourself. So that's another proximity which is happening virtually today for the Gen Z. Then we come to, according to Zanzog in 1968, he supported this view, stating, he stated repeated exposure to a new stimuli results in increasing positive evaluation of that stimuli, which is results from Morland and Beach in 1992 also stated the same thing, that more we get assisted in attending to a particular stimuli, more is the likelihood towards that stimuli. So the more are you shown something repeated exposure decreases negative emotion, and repeated exposure to positive emotion increases the positive emotion. So that suggests us as something as the proximity. Proximity is one of the most important, one of the most impactful, feature to increase attraction. And Zanzok also stated that this is not true for negative emotions. The more the negative things that you show, proximity will not increase. So it has to be that. It has to be positive, positively dwelling, positive emotions, appealing emotions, appealing things. So that was the first external factor that we have. Let's move to the next, which is physical attraction is also an important factor, which is very true. I'll give you an example for this, from your school life also. I had a beautiful video that was shared, and it could be a physical attraction also. It influences interpersonal evaluation at a greater level, mate selection, partner selection, teacher liking. There are a lot of times, younger teachers, I saw a video, I don't know if you should find that there's a little child that I saw in the video. The mother asked the child, what do you like in your classes? He said, the teacher. I like the teacher. So it's like, okay, you like the teacher, why do you like the teacher? Because she wears beautiful earrings. I like her because she wears beautiful earrings. So she's like, what do? Are you looking at the teacher all day or are you looking on the board? So the child accidentally stated, I look at the teacher, and then he fumbled and he said, oh, I look at the board also. So see, physical attraction is something, what is beautiful, appeals to be good and attracts you towards you. So people have a stronger tendency to attribute positive qualities to people who are physically attractive and negative qualities to unattractive people. That's why little pre-primary children have beautiful teacher dressed up colorfully, talking so sweetly, humbly. Why? That physical attraction increases the interpersonal attraction. So that's one of the most important thing. The researchers have found a preference for what researchers said. Large, wide set eyes, small nose, a prominent chin, a prominent cheekbone, is something which is found to be more attractive in women in comparison to any other group. So, also people stated that childlike features at times are, some groups, under two groups found childlike features and those having mature features. So people do at times at one age of time likes childlike features, and like one age of time likes mature features. Something that looks developed, isn't raw, is very maturely features, that gives them a sense of security. So that is physical attraction. Let's come to some factors based on interpersonal attraction with others. These are some simple factors which are not inside outside, but something which just happens. One is similarity. Similarity is very important for interpersonal attraction. Ever see, you form groups on the basis of similar values. So it says the birds of same feathers flock together, which is very true. But it's a phrase that suggests similar attributes, similar values, similar ways of working gets you together. Similar ways of thought, choice of music gets us together. So, but there is a strong evidence that similarity and non-complementary is basis of also attraction. So, higher proportion, more is the proportion of similarity, more would be the interpersonal attraction that we have. Let's move to something as interpersonal attraction, which is when we speak about determinants, there are some other determinants as we discussed. We'll just go through them again. Proximity, physical attraction, similarity, and then there's exchange. Exchange on the basis of equity. Exchange on the basis of equity is giving what is right to the other person. So when a group gets what is right, the interpersonal attraction towards the other group increases. So it's like an exchange. Intimacy is, a little bit of personal self-disclosure gets you close. Sharing your secrets, sharing a little bit of self-disclosure just gets you bang on close to the person. Mate selection, friends making, maybe your teachers at some point of time, when you share intimate things with them, intimate as in some secret self-disclosure, it gets them close to you. So that is few extra points which increases your attraction levels. Now, let's come to some 4 other factors, and then we'll go to a new topic after interpersonal attraction. Last way that says that interpersonal attraction increases is reciprocity, which was exchange, a different way of exchange. Reciprocity is, scholars have explored reciprocity effect ever since 1959. This was published by Secord and Backman study. Reciprocity refers Effect refers to the tendency where people are attracted towards the others who tend to like them. Reciprocally tends to like them and tends to feel for them in a similar way. So you like them and they like them. There's a sense of appealing contribution in terms of smiles, in terms of helping and supporting. So that's reciprocity. In 1950s, the researchers argued that people are attracted to each other on the basis of complementary needs. What reciprocity actually makes us help find better mates. Like puzzle pieces. What's incomplete in you is filled by your partner, and what's complete in you, do fill it in your partner. So that's reciprocity, which is likes and dislikes bonding together. So that's another way of your interpersonal attraction. So something that leads to interpersonal attraction, a few of these. Let's start with the beginning that we have. We have internal, which is something which is within you, which is your emotion, your sense of affiliation. Affiliation could be innate, affiliation could be situational. And then we have that gets you guys together, which is sitting together, having similar thoughts, doing complementary things for one another. That also increases the interpersonal attraction or physical attraction to also be taken note. To take in note. Now, after interpersonal attraction being one of the prominent thought of attitudes and behavior, obviously you're liking towards someone, interpersonal attraction changes it. Your attitude towards someone, your behavior further, and a person looking physically attractive changes. Your proximity with them, that attitude changes. That's why interpersonal attraction is added under attitude. Because this does change your attitude, your stereotypes maybe, and maybe change your behaviors towards the others. Now let's move to a new topic that we have, and we finished with this today, which is called as prosocial behavior. Prosocial behaviors are those which are intended to help other people. These are characterized by a concern for feeling, thinking, welfare of the other people. So this is helping the other people in need without looking forward to your welfare and your need. So behaviors are defined as prosocial behavior, which includes a lot of empathy. When you feel the pain of the other, like feeling their plight like them, is called as prosocial behavior. Prosocial behavior includes a wide range of actions such as helping, sharing, comforting, and cooperating. Now, let's identify prosocial behavior looks very different to other adjectives. I'll differentiate between the two, and then we'll talk about more kinds of prosocial terminologies. Altruism and helping behavior. Altruism is helping other people without expecting that it will ever come back. Like supporting a blind man walking the streets like every day, but not expecting anything. That person might not come in support of you. Helping other person, like helping a little child walk down the stairs, like not a little child, like probably helping a child getting their cycle down the stairs and expecting respect in return. That they say you thank you, they respect you, they wish you every morning and evening when they see you in the locality. That's helping behavior. You helping with a thought that this will come back is called helping behavior. So it's different from pro-social altruism. Now let's come to some of the terminology. That's how pro-social behavior is: supporting, lending your hand to people without expecting anything in return. Now, let's come to the last topic, which is the effect of similarity, dissimilarity, and attracting, explained by some of the theories. Pro-social behavior was that, and then we come down to some of the factors that impact both pro-social and your attraction levels also. So let's come to the balance theory. Balance theory suggested of Newcomb and Hyder. This just went a little heavy down. This is a part of interpersonal attraction. This was a theory. These are three theories given. One is the Newcomb balance theory. This just suggested that two people like each other and find out that they're dissimilar to each other in some way. And this leads, they found out that they're similar to some way, this leads to the equilibrium. And if this equilibrium, if even is shifting down, we tend to balance it like becoming emotionally pleasant like the other people. That's why dissimilarity and dissimilar tends to fight and similar tends to look into one another. Also, explanation of similarity on the same basis. Also, when you want to be adaptive, like when you plan to be adapting to the other circumstances and situation, that leads to interpersonal attraction to the other person. That leads us to pro-social last behavior as we did. We have proactive, reactive, and altruistic, which was discussed. We will continue from this, which is helping other people without expecting anything in return is pro-social behavior, which is feeling empathy, having empathy, and proactiveness also serve as self-benefiting. Altruism is nothing in return. Reacting is performing in return to your basic needs. This finishes with pro-social's introduction today. Thank you. Hope the class was understandable.